Hi, I'm Bridget Marsh, EVP and Deputy General Counsel at the LSTA. Today we're going to talk about the LSTA's form of fronting letter. Sometimes it's referred to as a co-arranger funding letter, and it is structured as a letter from the fronting bank to their co-arrangers. Now, a fronting bank is the lead arranger on a deal, sometimes referred to as the left side financial institution. That is the bank that has the relationship with the borrower. They structure the deal, they negotiate the terms of the transaction, they build the book, so they make those primary allocations to the different players in the market who are interested in buying a percentage of that loan. Now, the letter we're going to run through, as I said, is very short. It's about 4 or 5 pages long. And I'll highlight some of the key provisions which, if you're given as a junior lawyer, perhaps in-house or perhaps in private practice, to finalize and send off to the co-arrangers, hopefully this will be a bit helpful. So as I said, the lead arranger is the fronting arranger. And in the loan market, it's evolved that the fronting bank underwrites typically the entire loan purely for administrative ease. So let's now turn to the agreement itself, and I'm going to walk you through the different provisions. In our market, a loan can be either fully underwritten, and that's what you'll see here in the second paragraph. That means that the banks are committed to the borrower. No matter what, they're going to provide that full amount of the loan to the borrower. The second option here, and you'll have to choose one of the two, the banks agree to use their commercially reasonable efforts to arrange the loan. Now, in section 1 here, we reference the fact that the fronting bank is doing this, is funding the loan purely for administrative ease. A deal nowadays may have hundreds of lenders coming in. So you typically will have that one bank paying the amount of the loan to the borrower, and then they have to go and settle those primary allocations with the different players in the market to whom they've allocated a portion of the loan. Let's turn to section 2 of this letter agreement. And this, I think, is the area where you're probably going to encounter the most questions, or most of the negotiations will take place surrounding this. So as I said, the fronting bank has paid over the full amount of the loan, typically to the borrower. And then they have to turn around and settle all the different allocations, the primary trades or primary allocations, both terms mean the same thing. They have to then settle those with the various, let's just say, buy-side shops, I'll put those in quotes, institutional investors who are seeking to buy a portion of the loan. Now, hopefully, that all takes place fairly quickly, but in the world of the loan market, there can be delays, and that's why we have this agreement in place. So section 2 then spells out what happens when there are unsettled amounts, unsettled primary trades. Well, again, the fronting arranger has only funded the loan for administrative ease, so they want to make sure that the other co-arrangers, those other 2 or maybe 3 banks who have also stood right by them and taken on the risk, are there to help them out. So what they've agreed with the other big banks, and again, they're not the banks who've gotten a small amount in the primary. These are the big co-arranging banks. So they've agreed, hey, fronting letter, if after a period of time you still haven't settled all those primary allocations, we agree to come in and fund to you our pro rata share of those unsettled amounts. Okay, and at what stage is that all going to happen? Well, we're going to talk about that being a trade date. People think trades just occur in the secondary market. Well, it's going to occur here too. So the trade date is an important term. You'll see here in the LSTA's form, towards the end of section 2, that we've given you a date range in which that trade can take place. We don't give you the specific timing, That you will have to negotiate with the other parties. But you will look from the purchase period commencement date. I don't know, perhaps it's going to be, say, a week or 2 weeks after the funding date. And then it's going to be pushed out to the purchase period termination date. It could be earlier than the purchase period commencement date if there's already been an event of default. So you have a date, purchase period commencement date, purchase period termination date, date range typically a week or so, in which the trade between essentially the fronting bank and the co-arranging bank can take place. The important point is, when we revised this form a couple of years ago, and then we tweaked it again last year, so the date of the form is actually 2017, we gave it an automatic trigger. So if the fronting bank doesn't notify a co-arranger of a trade date during that date range period, let's just say they're asleep at the wheel or silent, then on that purchase period termination date, it's an automatic trigger, and the other banks must come in at that time and buy their pro rata share. Now, there is a lot of debate about this being an automatic trigger, but again, makes sense as you go back to the premise of this, that the fronting bank has done it all for the administrative ease. They shouldn't get left holding this entire amount. Okay, so let's just say this has taken place and the other arranger or two come in, they buy their pro rata share. How is that actually done? Well, this is a curious situation because we actually don't have any practical real life examples of this ever being done. So given that it's very rare for parties to litigate in the loan market, this agreement is rather vague in the sense of what documents have to be signed up. So we reference the assignment provisions in the relevant credit agreement. And you'll see that again at the bottom of section 2. You'll have to go to your credit agreement, fill in that blank, and then we say also that they'll be filling in and modifying as necessary the terms of the relevant assignment agreement. Okay, all good so far. Now, an important point to remember is that the fronting arranger has already made these allocations to other players in the loan market. And this issue came up a lot when we revised this form with the in-house counsel. Many failed to appreciate that those primary allocations or primary trades were also binding legal contracts, okay? Once you've agreed in the loan market, and this has been the case since 2002, so once parties, including the fronting bank, has agreed with a party the terms of the trade, the material terms, the amount, the borrower, what you're going to get, what you're going to pay for, boom, there is going to be a binding legal contract. So even though the other co-arrangers have come in and bought their pro rata share of an unsettled amount, they can't go off and build their own books. Now that expression means they can't go off into the loan market and then resell those amounts. They're stuck essentially waiting for that fronting bank to finalize those trades and settle. Section 4 talks about the sharing of information. And we put this in, I think this went in the 2017 turn of the document. Clearly, because there is that automatic trigger, the co-arrangers sort of need to know while the primary syndication is settling, while those trades are settling, how's it all progressing? How is it going? How much am I going to be on the hook for? So we've put in that section 4. Section 5 then talks about, well, let's just say the fronting agreement finally gets to settling some more of those unsettled amount. What happens? Well, we've provided for a back-to-back arrangement. The co-arranger who purchased their pro rata share of an unsettled amount of a primary trade then has to sell it back to the fronting bank, who then immediately settles their trade, their primary allocation. And people may also say, isn't this all just secondary trading? No, we're still in that primary allocation period. It's still regarded as the primary market. So those are really the key provisions. And if you look through the remainder of the letter agreement, it just talks about the governing law, confidentiality provision, and then we have some miscellaneous provisions. And it's that last section, section D, that will be the last one I'll talk about today. This was added in the turn of the document in 2017, and it references the section of the credit agreement that includes the bail-in language, the bail-in contractual recognition provision. What is a contractual recognition provision? I should say the LSTA does have further information on this on our website. We did issue at the end of 2015 relevant market advisories, but in a very high-level summary of it, the EU's Bank Recovery and Resolution Directive requires European financial institutions. So basically, if you have a European bank that's a co-arranger, they've got to get their counterparty to recognize that their unsecured liabilities, so here it could be their obligation to buy some of this unsettled amount of these trades. So their unsecured liabilities can, if they get into financial difficulty back home, can be written down, modified, or written off entirely by their relevant regulator. So that is a lot of information about Section D, the last one of our letter agreement, and I would urge you to go and have a look at some of the market advisories. But that is the section which you'll have to complete the reference to of your relevant credit agreement. So thank you. I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of the LSTA's form of fronting letter agreement.